In this video, I'm going to show you how to add AI image generation to your FlutterFlow project in less than 15 minutes. If you're new here, my name is Jake. I've been building apps, agents, and automations for the past 4 years, and I'm really passionate about teaching you guys things that I learned along the way, and how to build amazing things with no-code and low-code tools. So let's get right into it. All right, so I've gone ahead and created a new FlutterFlow project and designed a basic UI. Inside this UI, I have a grid view with a bunch of static images and a input component with a drop-down and text field, as well as an icon button. Now for this tutorial, I won't be using a backend like Firebase or Supabase. Rather, I'm just going to be saving everything inside my app states. So let's go ahead and create a new app state variable called image URLs by heading over to our app state values, creating a new value, and this will be an image path. It will be a list, and for my use case, it will be persisted. Again, you can save these image URLs to whatever backend database that you so choose, but I just didn't feel like setting one up for this project. But the process of saving them is the exact same. Now, the next step is to head over to runware.ai. The reason I use Runware over, say, OpenAI's DALL-E or Gemini is because those models provide temporary links to your image, meaning you would have to implement an additional step to go fetch the image, download the image into your storage, and then save the image path, versus Runware just allows you to access the image and they take care of the storage for you. So go ahead and sign in or sign up. And once you go through that process, you'll be brought to a page that looks similar to this. First thing that we're going to want to do is actually set up the API and get our API keys. So we can go ahead and create a new API key here. And we're going to call this image generation. Go ahead and copy this key and keep it somewhere safe because we'll be using it later on. Now from here, we're going to want to come into our documentation. So click on your profile and go to documentation. And we're going to connect to their API. So click on this how to connect, and it's going to give us a basic API header here, or API command here. Copy this URL here, v1, and we're going to head back into our FlutterFlow project and create a new API call. And we're going to call this text to image. This is going to be a post, and we're going to put that API URL right in here. And now we do need to add our headers, which will be content application JSON. So we can look at what our headers are here. So this is how you can read it if you want, header, by clicking here. So copy this. And then we're going to copy our authorization with that bearer. So let's go ahead and put our API key in here like so. And now we can go ahead and add our body. So our body is going to be JSON like such. Now let's go ahead and come to our text to image generation here. And this will give us a better example of how our data is coming in. So let's just copy this entire thing right here. Copy and paste that inside our FlutterFlow. Let me go ahead and explain what these parameters are and how you can adjust them to fit your needs. So first up, we have the task type. This is whether this will be an image or a video reference. In our case, we're of course generating images, so this is image reference. You're going to have some type of unique identifier for a task. You can set this dynamically using like a user UUID and a date time. Then we have the model. So what model do you want to use to generate the image? Runware has about 340 some odd thousand models in their catalog. So you can just choose one that best fits your use case. We have a positive prompt, which is what are you trying to generate? And you can also set a negative prompt if you so choose. So what don't you want it to generate? Height and width are pretty self-explanatory. The steps can be a little bit confusing. So steps are how many times the model will iterate over the same image to get like a more coherent and detailed result. So you can see as it does more steps, the image detail gets better and better. This demonstration doesn't really show the best because it looks like it's pretty good at 5 steps. However, in my experience, you want to bump that closer up to 30 just because otherwise you'll get a bunch of like rainbow chunks in your image, also called artifacts. Now heading back over to FlutterFlow, one more parameter that we do want to add is our number of steps, number of results rather. So how many images do we want to generate? Let's just set this to 2, and now we can format and save. Now, before we can test this out, there's 2 little settings that we need to turn on. We need to turn on encode and decode UTF-8 response. That's just needs to be done when you're working with images. And now we can go ahead and test the response. Let's test the API call. And just like that, we've got 2 images. Now from here, you have 2 different options on how you want to save and display the data. You can either choose to parse the JSON paths and display it like this by using this path down here. Or my personal favorite is to come up here, select everything with Control A, and then copy it with Control C. And we're going to create a new data type. So head over to your data types tab, click on this green little icon up here, give it a name like Gen Images, and then just paste everything with Control V. This will go ahead and create a data type schema based on that API response. Now, while we're here, let's go ahead and change this image URL from a string to an image path. And we are all set with our data schema. So let's head back to our API response. Let's test it again. But this time, now we can parse it as a data type. So click on parse as data type, select that type, which is going to be Gen Images, and we can go ahead and save it. Now that we've confirmed that our API is saving the correct way and we are parsing it as a data type, let's go ahead and add some variables to our API call to make it a little bit more dynamic. So for this tutorial, I am going to add 3 variables, a positive prompt, a model, and a task UUID. All of those will be strings. Of course, if you want it, you could add more variables like height, width, the number of steps, and the number of results. Feel free to modify it as you want. But again, I'm just using positive prompt, model, and task UUID. So go ahead and once you have those in, delete the hard-coded parameters and drop in your dynamic ones. So remove this. And let's go ahead and test that with some dynamic variables, which I've gone ahead and added right here. So test API call. And let's see if that generated a dinosaur. It certainly did. Fantastic. So now that we have our API call working correctly, let's go ahead and add the ability to add dynamic models. There's a couple different ways that you could do this. You could either store your models in a database, but again, for this tutorial, I'm not using a backend. So the approach that I'm going to use is I'm going to create a constant and I'm going to call it models like this. It's going to be a list of strings. And I'm just going to put in the different model mix here. If you guys are looking for how to find models, so inside your Runway, you can go to the models here and you can just simply click on one of these tags and it copies the model ID that you will need for the API call. You can add this to your database or you can add this to an app constant like I did, and that will make everything dynamic. So let's go ahead and connect that to our front end and make that work. So what we're going to do is inside our dropdown, we have some options here. I just put those in. What we are going to do instead is define these options as our constants, our models, and we're going to go ahead and give them labels. We're going to call this Google, Diffusion, and Runway. So now we can actually go ahead and call the API from our homepage. Inside our homepage, we have this input. We need to define the OnTap action. and we are going to call an API call. This API is going to be the text to image, and we're going to set our variables, all three of them, which is the positive prompt, the model, and the task UUID. So the positive prompt is just going to be our widget inputs text field. Our model will be our widgets input dropdown, and then our task UUID, you can make this some type of unique identifier. I am just going to hard code this in because I don't have any authenticated users, so I can't use their user ID. Now, once we have the API call working, we are going to call this API result, and we are going to set a if API action succeeded. If it does, we are going to create a loop. This loop is going to loop over the list inside our action or our action outputs API response as data type, data structure field, data, no further changes. And what we're going to do is update our app state. Update app state, because this is where we're storing our image URLs. We're going to update this by adding to a list. And what value are we going to add? We're going to add our current item of loop action 1, data structure field, image URL, and confirm. So this will loop through all the list, all the number of results that you have, and add each item to a list. If you want it to save it differently, say you want it to save each image individually into your database, then you could just create and store, create and store, create and store, however you so choose. Again, I'm just adding images to a list, so I'm just going to loop over that list and add each item to the app state list. After that's done, I can actually come up here, clear my pins so I'm not seeing any text in there, and then that is good. So now would be the time that if you wanted to add any fallback variables, what happens if the API call fails, you can do that, and or any actions that happen afterwards. I'm not going to do that in this tutorial. Instead, I'm going to connect the last little bit of things up to the front end and then show you guys this in action. So a couple things that we need to do here. First, our grid needs to be generating images dynamically. We're going to call this images, and we're going to get these values from our app state image URLs. Save. It's going to generate those all dynamically, and then each one of our images, we just need to connect to the image item and confirm. Now we are ready to test this to see how well it works. Alrighty, so I have an emulator here up on my phone and I'm ready to test this. First, I'm going to go ahead and select a model that I want to use, for example, diffusion, and then I'm going to give it a prompt like a orange cat sitting on a blue balloon. And we can see how well this works. And there we go. We successfully got our image generation working, and we're able to switch out the models as we choose. But if you guys really want to take your FlutterFlow game to the next level, check out this video where I dive deep into FlutterFlow components and show you how to build them from scratch.